Have you ever felt tired of being yourself? It's a feeling that's hard to explain, you know? Like that Sunday morning when you look in the mirror and realize you're fed up. The week has barely started, but you already know how it ends. It's as if you've lived this 1,000 times. It's not just the routine that's become predictable, it's your own patterns. Making the same mistakes, breaking the same promises, falling into the same traps, as if the path to wisdom were a staircase and you were an elderly person with vertigo. Maybe I was born in the wrong body, you think. Maybe I was meant to be a dust mite. Who knows? Maybe then my family would be satisfied. It's impossible that my destiny was to be human since I'm so bad at it. Everything seems stupid. Working, paying bills, giving opinions. How would you solve the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? I don't know. I can't even solve the Postal Service CAPTCHA. If I was really born for the game of life, why do I feel like pressing pause and hitting reset? That was me at 20. Today I'm 30. After a lot of medication and therapy, I can proudly say that it didn't help at all. Just kidding, it helps. Walking, meditating, breathing. But for me at least, there was something that helped more than all of that. A philosophical idea that made me see life with new eyes, to the point where I wanted to take better care of my body and mind. I never delved deep into this idea, even though I've talked about existential fatigue before. After all, that's what we're talking about. That fatigue that won't go away. You can sleep, go on vacation, buy a wrist massager. It's no use, right, honey? You bought one and you're still tired. Anyway, today I want to show you the philosophical idea that saved me from the existential void. It starts with a riddle. What are you? Not who, but what. In 10 minutes, I'll prove how the answer can save you years of therapy, or at the very least, give you a topic for your college application essay. I used it for mine, got a good grade. So to understand our riddle, we need to answer another question. What is real? According to Descartes, a great philosopher, it's certainly not the external world. We could be in the Matrix. Have you ever seen your neighbor come home with groceries, drinking water? And what about women outside our social circle? If they're real, why do they run away every time I follow one? We can only affirm the reality of one thing, ourselves. Because to affirm something, there must be someone who affirms it. From this comes the maxim, I think, therefore I am. In other words, even if the world is a lie, there is something genuine within us. Some call it a soul, others a mind. Here we'll call it the I. So for Descartes, the I is real. It exists without a doubt. In 1930, Jean-Paul Sartre questioned this conviction. Fellow philosophers, he says, if the I exists, where is it? He continues, try to imagine yourselves. You will probably visualize your body, face, name, but if these things are the true I who is imagining them, perhaps the I is the voice in our head. Do you see? Any introspection seems to divide our sense of I into two, the one who imagines and the one who is imagined. If the I is the center of our reality, as the I believers claim, there should only be one, unless there are two subjects in our head, thinking, choosing, generating assets. Relax, this is just a metaphor. Enough with the confusion, Sartre exclaims. We must define what the I is precisely. To answer this, he introduces the concept of transcendence. Look at this banana. We can see it from many angles, from above, from below, from the side, but we never access it completely. At the microscopic level, there are colonies of germs reproducing. At the atomic level, 99% of the banana is empty, and over time it changes. Today's fruit is not the same as tomorrow's. This means there's more to it than we can perceive. That is, this banana transcends the human mind. According to Sartre, the same is true for any entity in the universe: stones, plants, animals. We never access these things completely, only representations of them. This happens because of the limited nature of our consciousness. We can imagine it as an artist who, through sensory information, touch, sight, smell, creates images of the universe. That is, it converts transcendent reality into simplified representations. This conversion happens in milliseconds. That's why we don't experience it as an artist's creation, but as a flashlight that, when pointed, reduces transcendent reality to mental objects. Knowing this, we can go back to the initial question. What is the I? It's what happens when this flashlight illuminates its own source. You, a transcendent organism composed of trillions of cells, are reduced to a mental object, your name, your face, your life story. In other words, consciousness and ego are separate entities with consciousness coming first. That's why when we imagine our body, there is something imagining. When we shout mentally, there is something listening. The central point of our existence is not the I or the ego, Sartre affirms, but this something that imagines, hears, and feels. One last analogy to wrap up the reasoning and understand how this idea can change our lives. Consciousness is like a hole in a sheet of paper. It's difficult to define because it's not a thing, but rather an absence, a void, a non-thing. In this indefinable space, our perception of the world emerges. The transcendent universe is recreated in simplified snippets. Things, ideas, our sense of self. Sartre concludes, therefore, that Descartes was mistaken. It is not the I that creates thought, but thought that creates the idea of the I. I didn't understand what he was saying the first time I read this. I was like, what? Confused, perplexed, angry, and the bills that create the I? What a nerd. Tomorrow the bill will come in my name to the collection agency. That's me. What does this blah 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 change for me? Suddenly it clicked. There is no me. What exists is consciousness, a flow of thoughts situated in the present. Since we were born, our culture has tried to mold this flow through institutions like family, school, and church. The function of these entities is to form the person, from the Latin persona, which refers to the masks used in Greek theater. In other words, life in society is like a play in which, depending on the time and place, we receive predefined roles that influence our attitudes. For example, in Sri Lanka, men should not accept sweets from boys, nor women from girls, as it brings bad luck. In the United States, we don't have that. No one thinks it's bad luck to get candy from a kid. Well, maybe in Florida. These norms and superstitions don't reflect objective truths, but the dynamics of cultural theater. The idea is that by wearing the mask of our play, we will be accepted by other personas. So although the I is a creation of the mind, it is not a free creation. Its form is dictated by the collective. Boys wear blue, girls wear pink, smile, it could be worse. But what happens when we can't fit into the show? When for some reason we don't see the point of our role? Kafka illustrates this well in his book, The Metamorphosis. In the work, we follow Gregor, a low-income young man who works incessantly to help his family. One day he wakes up and realizes he is transformed into a grotesque insect, unable to work. Gregor isolates himself, stops eating, and gives up on a romantic relationship. After all, nobody likes a cheap man, get it? The story is a metaphor for depression and how in our culture, our worth is tied to productivity. Gregor's transformation seems to be psychological. He doesn't really turn into an insect. He gets tired of working, and that's why he starts to see himself as one. At least that was my interpretation. I recommend you read it. Great book, short, profound, and with my link you get a discount. Anyway, so, while creating a persona is fundamental for life in society, taking the performance too seriously can make us sick, especially in a show governed by questionable ideals. And so we return to the beginning. You know that feeling on a Sunday when you look in the mirror and realize you're fed up? One part of you recognizes that the world is tiring, but another suspects the problem is internal. As if you always find a way to be dissatisfied. A stranger in your own body. That was me at the beginning of my adult life. For me, school was like a rehearsal for the big moment. After years of memorization, it was time to get on stage and shine. This idea generated a sick perfectionism. I couldn't fail. People became measures of comparison. There was always someone better or happier. In my desire to be like them, my life became a parade of masks. One for the family, one for my colleagues, one for the boss. Always smiling, always trying to please. Behind the scenes, I would cry and take handfuls of medicine just to get out of bed. By constantly projecting a better future, my present became a limbo, where I was never truly present. And here the words begin to fail, because I can't explain where so much anguish came from. I just know that I would look in the mirror and see an imposter who spent the day giving out compliments, but was unable to recognize anything good in himself. A hypocrite, indifferent to victory but terrified of the idea of failure. A contradiction not of the interesting kind, but the kind that was disgusting. And so what began with a search for applause ended in a solitary, equally self-centered lament. Man, I'm so tired, I said. Now see how subtle that phrase is, depending on the interpretation. If we see the I as a fixed entity, it's equivalent to saying, I'm so tired of existing. But if we understand the I as a creation of the mind, as Sartre suggests, the phrase changes. I'm so tired of existing in function of the I. This psychosocial construct which, precisely because it was built, can be rebuilt. Starting with its foundation, the concept of self-love, remember? In the Sartrean view, our core is not the ego but consciousness. Loving yourself, then, is loving the present because it is in the present that consciousness resides. Think of your most cherished memories. Watching a sunset, caressing a pet, helping someone special. They are vivid memories because when they occurred, you were fully present. Here is the secret to happiness: forgetting the ego and becoming one with reality. From this perspective, even existential fatigue changes its meaning. Instead of a complaint against life, it becomes a call in favor of it. Because it's as if the mind is saying, I'm tired of being me, of exhausting my energy on the stage of appearances, of measuring and optimizing every aspect of my existence. I'm tired of being me. Can we, just for a moment, just be? Like a cat, a flower, a star? An artist who sees the night with gentleness. Like a child who laughs at their own shadow and, without meaning to, discovers the greatest of secrets. To love life is to love yourself. Not the ego, the real self. The one that began however many billions of years ago in the bang that illuminated the cosmos with colors, mysteries, consciousnesses, and whose silence is like a hint to our distress. Relax. Existing is enough. What are you? An unfillable void. Impermanent order. A contradiction of the fascinating kind. If you don't see it, I recommend you take off the mask and look.